Yeah, so I'm going to talk about supporting self-improvement consumers to avoid culty self-help. I'm like the self-help girl at the ICSA conference because there are a lot of crossovers between self-help and cults, and we'll get into that a little bit more. First, I just want us to just take a minute. I'll get down to business. Next bit for a sec. Just get comfortable. All right. Uh-oh. There's a video here. I want to play it, but maybe I'm not going to be able to play it. There are these videos. Okay. That's okay. Okay, so we're just going to take a minute. I want us to just think about our world. Think about where we are, what it feels like to be here right now, in this room, in our bodies, in this city, on this continent, in this world, in this universe, ever expanding outward into infinity. Sometimes when I think about myself in the universe, and I think about how I'm just a little speck of dust in the universe, I'm just a nanosecond in the whole stretch of time and space. I like to think about this. It's kind of fun and exciting. It makes me feel like I'm floating. It makes me feel kind of weightless. And then sometimes I find those thoughts get overwhelming and a little too much, and it sinks down and you just kind of stop for a minute, and it's a bit crushing sometimes even. I think it's these types of thoughts that have always driven humans to seek, to search for meaning. We create art, we write stories, we compose music to try to understand the purpose of what we're doing here, what our feelings mean, who we are, what the point of everything is. And I think that it's this very feeling, this drive to understand things, that can sometimes cause us to get into some dicey situations, like cults. So this isn't true for every person who gets into a cult, or as we know, many people were born into cult situations. So this is talking about a particular kind of group of people. But we sign on to programs that tell us they're going to help us find enlightenment. We join a group that promises the magic of connection and community. And we follow the charismatic leader who tells us they can help us overcome our obstacles and live our fullest life possible. So it's this fact of seeking that inspired this presentation. I always go back to the quote from Mark Vicente, the NXIVM survivor and whistleblower. Nobody joins a cult. They join a good thing. And then they realize they were fucked. So the theme of this conference is evidence-based treatments for cult recovery. I'm going to back it up a little bit to before anyone joins the cult in the first place. So what if we could empower the people who are seeking, the people who might find themselves in a culty situation, so that they can see the difference between the genuinely good thing and the thing that's going to end up sucking them into a dark hole of coercion and manipulation and abuse. What if? So now I'll introduce myself. My name is Jean Brown. I'm the director of Seek Safely. It's a nonprofit organization dedicated to self-help consumer safety. I'm the co-author of a memoir called This Sweet Life, which I co-wrote with my mom about the death of my sister. who went to a self-improvement event and ended up dying. The co-host of a podcast called the Seek Safely podcast. And I also have a master's in public policy. So this is my sister Kirby. Kirby was like the ultimate seeker. She lived in Baja, Mexico. She lived like an alternative lifestyle. She was a decorative faux painter. She would work really hard for 7 months of the year and then take the rest of the year off to travel and visit friends and family. She was always up for new experiences. She loved to travel. She loved to get involved in different things. She was an active person. She had a lot of different relationships. She had a lot of different jobs. And at the point when she came into contact with the book The Secret and James Arthur Ray, she was 38 years old. And she was kind of looking to get to the next step in her life. You know, the next step of her business. She was an entrepreneur. She was looking to get to the next step in her personal life where she might have a relationship and a family. And yeah, she saw The Secret on Oprah. Thanks, Oprah. And she read The Secret. She watched the movie. She started telling everybody they should read it and watch it. Then James Ray was hosting a free event in Baja where she lived. She went to the free event. At the free event, she signed up for the next event, which was a couple $1,000s. When she went to that event, she signed up for another event. And in the space of less than a year, she was at the Spiritual Warrior Retreat in Sedona, Arizona, which was a 5-day retreat. Over the course of the 5 days, there were a lot of coercive exercises really designed to kind of take people under James Ray's control. And then the culminating event of the 5-day retreat was a so-called sweat lodge. And I make that very clear, it was not a real sweat lodge. A sweat lodge is a legitimate traditional ceremony. And what James Ray ran was not that. So it became a big news story. Kirby was one of 3 people who lost her life after that event. James Ray there was a criminal trial. He went to jail for 20 months. Now he's back out there doing the same stuff, more or less, with a little different flavor now. Yeah, so that's how we kind of got into learning what happened to my sister and then understanding how it was that she went from picking up a book that she saw on Oprah and then losing her life at an event like this. So as I said, my mom and I wrote this memoir, and we continue to tell this story. That was a book reading I did recently, which was fun. And then we also created an organization. So the name of our organization is Seek Safely. It's a nonprofit organization. Seek stands for self-empowerment through education and knowledge. And we take a 3-tiered approach. So we're looking at trying to create some regulation, because one of the things that we learned is that in this industry, there's no regulation. This is part of the problem. People are specifically operating outside of the realm of more professionalized industries such as mental health fields. So there's nothing governing this body. We said if James Ray had some sort of license, it would have been taken away, because what he did was so obviously criminal and irresponsible, but there was no governing organization to take anything away from him. We also work with people within the industry to help them to be more responsible, because a lot of the people in this self-help industry want to do good work. They have genuine and good intentions, and there are a lot of predatory people in the industry as well. So then that's where the 3rd tier comes in with consumers. We're trying to educate consumers to be safer consumers, to be more thoughtful about who they're putting their trust in, who they're giving their money, who they're putting their faith in and giving their time. So that's what we're all about. So as you can see, we have our website. We try to kind of focus on those 3 different tiers. In terms of the legislative action, we do have a self-help consumer safety bill in New York State that just passed the New York State Senate. Get through the assembly, but you can learn more about that in the legislative section on our website. So that is exciting. So in terms of consumer education, this is what I really want to focus on again, as I mentioned, consumer empowerment. So this is the kind of stuff that we try to teach people, things like red flags to be aware of. So, you know, a guru promising a solution to all of your problems, manipulative sales tactics, scarcity, and that kind of thing. Coded language blaming people for their problems or their inability to achieve their goals. The leader of the program or belief system doesn't allow people to ask questions. The person, the guru or the leader is talking about things that they really have no right to be talking about in terms of their background or expertise. At events, activities are a surprise. Risks are not clearly defined and there's no risk management plan. Also, sometimes it comes down to a gut feeling that you might have that something is wrong. Or there are things like you could look up news articles. So we're at this cult conference, right? So do the red flags sound familiar? Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, so as we learned about self-help, we constantly kept coming against the idea of cults. And we were confronted with this idea from the beginning. Was the event that my sister was at, was it a cult or not? So that happened in 2009. So we were kind of quick to say, no, it wasn't a cult. In 2009, I think the word cult held even more stigma than it does now. And it was a way to easily dismiss it and to dismiss the participants as, you know, just out there fringe people who were obviously going to get themselves into something stupid like that to begin with. But we knew, whether you would call it a cult or not, we knew who my sister was. We knew that while she may have been vulnerable for certain reasons, she was a smart person, she was a strong person, she was discerning. So we knew that there had to be something else under what happened to her. I've come to see it as a bit of a continuum from safe and legitimate self-help to something that becomes more coercive or culty. And I think that, you know, we want to draw a really clear line. We want to draw a really clear boundary. It's very difficult to do that. Last year, I presented at ICSA with two colleagues, Callie Sorensen and Jennifer French, who are both cult survivors. They shared their experiences and now they're researching and trying to help other cult survivors. And we talked about this fine line between self-help and cults. And as I said, it's like almost impossible to see the line sometimes. Sometimes there's a group. You might go to one event that group holds, completely fine. The inner circle of that group, total cult, like 100%. So it's really difficult to define that line. So here are some of the points of connection. The other really important thing that we found was that the people who often get pulled into a cult, again, they weren't looking to get into a cult. They were looking for something that we would probably call self-help. Oftentimes, these are people who might need some mental health services, cannot access them for a variety of reasons, so they look to self-help. Maybe they've had experiences with more established care providers or established groups, and they found those to be lacking. They want to find something more alternative, and they go to self-help, which purports to give people the answers. We also find that even if you might not define something as self-help, a lot of times the group or the leader is using very culty tactics to get people to buy further into the program. So like my sister, who 1 month she sees the book and 10 months later, she's going to the event that costs $10,000 That's the goal. They want you to get completely immersed in that ecosystem so that you're putting all of your money, all of your resources, your time, your effort, your trust into that resource. The other thing we've seen is that sometimes well-intentioned providers, they think they need to do everything they can to push their business forward. They hear from somebody, or maybe they've had a coaching session on how to grow your business, and they learn all kinds of really scammy tactics about how to do that. So they unintentionally, again, they had good intentions to begin with, but they start going down a culty road themselves without even realizing it. Another important thing that we talk about is the idea of vulnerability. So anyone who is seeking to make a change in their life or to make improvements, that's an inherently vulnerable place to be. Vulnerability isn't bad. We have to be vulnerable sometimes. We just need to be aware of that vulnerability when we're starting to go down this road, because it puts us in a position where we can easily be taken advantage of. So again, on vulnerability, people seek in times of change and transition in their lives. So often if they are at a certain age, we see certain age groups are more vulnerable. People who are going through a big change like divorce or recovery from substance abuse. People seek when they're looking to level up in their lives, like my sister, they're looking to get to the next stage. Or as I mentioned, people seek when they need but can't access more traditional resources for help. I think that's a video too. Okay. Let's see what that slide was, because it's not there. So another aspect of vulnerability. In the era that we're in now with the internet, so often we're looking for these resources online, and the way that our movements and our activity online gets tracked, it's creating a web around us wherein the providers can so easily target the people who are looking for the things that they provide. And so a good example of this is Teal Swan, whose videos are so well designed and whose SEO is so good that if you are searching for anything that's even close to something she's talking about, chances are you're going to see one of her videos on YouTube. So, you know, not only are we inherently vulnerable, but the systems around us are also kind of amplifying that vulnerability. So the question that I asked at the beginning was, what if? What if we could protect seekers, give them a little more protection against their own vulnerability and against this ecosystem that we find ourselves in? I'm not going to say that I have an answer for protecting every seeker, but I'm hoping that maybe this could be a part of the puzzle. So, empowering seekers. So we created this thing called the Seek Safely Empowerment Compass. I'm going to give you guys a copy. I think I have enough. I estimated well. And you can just like pass it around. So interestingly, with Seek, our logo is a compass. We chose that logo a long time ago, right when we started the organization, because we thought, okay, the idea is seeking. A compass is a tool that you use to help you when you seek so you don't get lost. And happily, when we created this tool for consumer empowerment, the compass also seemed to work really well for us. So one of the things I really like about the compass is that when you think of what a compass does, it does not tell you where to go, right? It is a tool that helps you orient yourself around fixed points so that you know where you're going. The whole point is you want to go from here to there, like a process of change. You're starting in one place and you're hoping to end up somewhere different. So we're not trying to tell you where to go. We're just trying to give you something that can help orient you as you make that journey so that you don't get lost. Other things, you know. Okay, so I'll go through the points of the compass and what they mean, and then if you want, if you have a pencil, you're welcome to fill out your own compass. We'll do that kind of towards the end if we have time. But if you don't want to do it, that's perfectly okay too. Don't feel like you have to. All right, so the true north is all about core values, guiding principles, lifelong ideals that are essential to your sense of self. So these things are like our constants, important aspects of our identities, and things that we don't want to change about ourselves or our lives, even as we grow and evolve. So examples would be something like your family or faith, your desire to explore, your sense of service to others, maybe environmentalism. So as you're evaluating a self-help resource, knowing that the resource kind of meshes with those core values, I think is a good way to evaluate whether it's going to be a good resource for you or not. The West Point is your assets. So these are the talents, skills, tools, things that you already have. I like this one because a lot of times when we undergo a process of seeking and growth, we're focused on what we lack. So I think it's maybe a good exercise to spend a little time thinking about what you already have that you love and appreciate about yourself. It's also things like your learning style or the self-knowledge of what motivates and inspires you. So again, in terms of evaluating a self-help resource, you'll be more likely to succeed with something that can utilize those strengths and those assets that you already have. Kind of like polishing with the grain of the wood. If you're using something that's already there, it's probably going to be more successful rather than working against yourself. The South Point is your foundation. This is a tricky one. So it's kind of like your underpinnings. Sometimes these can be things that hold you up, give you support and strength. And sometimes these can be the things that are a little bit shaky for you. So this is where we would identify vulnerabilities. And interestingly, I think sometimes the points in your foundation can be both a strength and a vulnerability. Really good example of this would be family. Sometimes our family members are really a source of strength or support for us. Sometimes though, our family can be a source of pain. They can also be enabling for things, habits or behaviors that are destructive. So again, it's not a judgment about these things, it's just about awareness. Knowing that when you're going to undergo or seek a program of change, you're aware of these things. Another good example, I think, is trauma. We usually think of trauma as something negative, a source of pain for us, something that, could be triggering for us and put us into a difficult position. On the other hand, our trauma can be something positive in our lives. From our trauma, we can learn and grow. We can gain things like empathy and insight. But again, it's just the purpose is to be aware of these things. Sometimes this point too, when we spend some time thinking about this, we might identify some areas where we need to do a little bit of work before we put ourselves in a more vulnerable position. You might identify something that you say, I think I need to work through this pain or this trauma a little bit more. I think I need to have some better boundaries with my family before I put myself into a vulnerable position. So the East Point is your aspirations. This is the more traditional stuff of self-help, identifying your goals, your vision. Sometimes these are really big life goals. Sometimes these are smaller, more specific goals, like I want to be more productive. So yeah, this is like what you're more likely to see when you're looking for self-help, but I think it's really important to map this out before you actually go into a program of change, because one of the interesting things that we've seen a lot with people who get into self-help is that they may have had a life goal before they started. They get into a program with a specific teacher, and that goal is gone. Like the number of people who go to self-help events and come out wanting to be life coaches. When, you know, they went in wanting to improve their own business, they went in wanting to be a more successful actor, like Allison Mack, right? And then she unwittingly becomes a trafficker for Kefenir and Nexium. So it's really, the whole compass is about putting these things down on paper, identifying these things for yourself, so you have this clear picture, because once you get into that position where you're becoming more vulnerable and ideas are coming at you all the time, it becomes really easy to lose sight of these things. This is my completed compass that I wrote things down on. No, that's all there. So yeah, I put down my true north points, or things like my family and friends. These are all, again, the values, community and civic responsibility, finding beauty in the world, being a good environmental steward. The West Point, my assets. Yeah. So, your turn. So, yeah, there's time. I've run through that. So if you want, you are welcome to fill out your own compass, or if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. As I mentioned, here is a QR code. I can put that back up, and then this can hopefully help you if you want to fill it out right now. I'll go back to that in a minute. But the main thing we want to, kind of highlight as well is that seeking is not bad. Finding these resources is not bad. Again, this is very normal. This is like a normal part of being human. We are not content to just have all of life come at us. We want to understand it. Super normal. We've been doing it for as long as we've existed. We just want to empower people, protect people when they're undergoing these journeys of self-discovery and change, so that they can be a little more better prepared to not get diverted from the path and pulled into a more dangerous program.